Hello, everybody, and welcome to the Jeff Bradbury Show. My name is Jeff Bradbury, and thank you so much for joining us today and making TeacherCast your home for professional development. On today's show, we're going to be talking all about entrepreneurship, fatherhood, having those successes, losing successes, and how you can show resilience in your business. Thank you so much for spending time with us today. If this is the first time you're listening to our show, don't forget to hit that like and subscribe. You can find us all over at teachercast.net/podcast. And of course, we're over on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, YouTube, and wherever you guys get your audio and video content these days. I hope you guys are having a great start to 2025. We have been having an amazing assortment of guests on the Jeff Bradbury Show, talking all about entrepreneurship, social media, web development, you name it, lots of great topics. And if you'd like to share all the great things that you're doing in this world to change the world around you, we would love to have you guys as a guest. Please feel free to head on over to teachercast.net/contact and fill out my form. Would love to have you guys on the show as a guest and help you share your passions with our community. Entrepreneur, emotional roller coaster, resilience. 3 words that absolutely define my guest today. I am thrilled to have on somebody who I hope after listening to this conversation you learn from, and I hope you have a chance to listen to this conversation not once, but multiple times. It is going to be one of my favorite interviews of the entire year. My guest today is an entrepreneur, primarily in the real estate business. He's the CEO and founder of a fantastic company called Tricon Homes, which is a successful construction company in urban Houston, Texas. He's also the author of a fantastic book called The Business of Building, which is labeled as a masterclass on how to thrive in the face of adversity and how to build and rebuild wealth from zero, no matter at the odds. Not only has he been featured on likes of CNN, CBS, ABC, US Business, NBC News, NPR, and a number of great things. You can find him over at his website, joseberlanga.com. I want to welcome onto my show, Mr. Jose Berlanga. Jose, welcome to TeacherCast. Thank you so much for joining us today.
Jeffrey, thank you for that introduction. You are so kind. And I'm glad to be here. Thank you for having me.
I have been looking forward to having you on the program today. Many people out there listening to this show, we're teachers. We're looking to build a business. We're looking maybe for that extra side hustle. We're looking to become entrepreneurs. And ironically, on the day that we are recording this, I'm actually doing a lesson with my middle school students on how to be entrepreneurs and how to create a business. And we'll talk a little bit about this as we go through. But right now, all of my 8th graders are building restaurants from the ground up. And I'd love to pick your brain a little bit about that. But before we get into all of those details, talk to us a little bit. Tell us a little bit about your story. You had a fun childhood. You became an entrepreneur. Who is Jose?
That's a deep question. Who are we? It's a difficult answer. I think we are all trying to find ourselves. If we really skip all the basics, obviously I'm an entrepreneur, I'm a writer, I'm a builder, a developer. Now I invest. I've got some moments of luck, which I think your audience will enjoy to hear, that sometimes is just getting lucky and having the right opportunities. But overall, I'm an entrepreneur that has been struggling through the ups and downs of life that never stop. And I think that goes without saying that most of us are just trying to get by, getting things done. Sometimes we're up, sometimes we're down. And I hope to bring some interesting and positive advice to those who are trying to start a business and build something.
Now, you grew up in Mexico City area. Am I correct in that?
Yes, correct.
What was that like growing up? What was the school systems like? Talk to us a little bit about that early education for you.
Well, I had a very unusual childhood. Schools were great back then. Safety was different. Lifestyle was different. Yeah, I grew up in some areas that were tough. The things that most kids do not have to experience nowadays. You don't see kids walking to school or from school. and having to get into fights after school on the streets and things like that. And the environment has certainly changed. Safety and precautions have changed, but it was a different place, not only back then for everyone, but particularly for me, because I had an unusual life. I was in an accident where I experienced a lot of reconstructive surgery for a number of years, and I was in and out of hospitals where I kept either missing school, missing learning opportunities, and the whole and skipping this whole process. Nowadays you miss 1 or 2 days of school and you fall behind. I would miss school for months at a time, just being in hospitals, in and out for the most important educational years of your life, from the time I was 4 until I was 15, that I kept going through this process. And it was very, very difficult. We also kept moving neighborhoods for one reason or another. So I kept being the new kid in school. I probably, that's such an interest. You started with a very interesting question, because I rarely speak about my formative years and my education. I probably broke the record of going to different schools. I won't get into it, but I went to kindergarten, one school, first grade, second grade, third grade. Then in fifth grade, I went to another school. Sixth grade, I went seventh grade. Then I moved out of Mexico City by eighth grade. I was the new kid, and it was difficult because I was already struggling with other parts of my life where adapting was tough. But this gave me the fundamental ingredients, let's call it, to deal with adversity, to deal with problem solving, to build my ability to relate to others, to develop my personal skills, my ability to sell, my ability to get through most of the things that none of us are perhaps prepared for. And I think that it had a lot to do with my childhood.
You said you moved around a lot until you were around 15. What brought you to the States?
Well, eventually it was education. I had the opportunity. My father, I was lucky enough where my father was in a business that allowed him to travel to United States. And I was able to visit the United States with him several times, until eventually he was able to get us here for a better education, for a better life. And when I got here, I thought it was the greatest place in the world, from the cleanliness, the streets, the highways, the malls, the stores, everything just felt so amazing to me. And I didn't want to go back. I figured out how to start a life here and move on. But yes, my father was able to get us here, and that changed our lives. I mean, this country, I know that a lot of people are going through very, very difficult times, but what we need to keep in mind is that the opportunities are still there.
And we're going to talk a little bit about entrepreneurship today, and I'd love to get your definition of the term. This is something that I was even working with my students with this week, is how do you define? But I mean, you just mentioned this. You were the new kid on the block many, many times. I'm sure that has something to do with this success. Walking into a new place, coming up with what is your brand, introducing it, building a brand new community. Are there similarities between building a business and walking into a new setting, a new school system, a new community, introducing yourself to the world and saying to yourself, I'm going to be successful at this? What was that like? And how did your education and all of that moving set you up for success in your adult world?
Moving around, changing schools, changing environments, build a level of confidence over the years in me, knowing that starting over was okay. I think that was a very, very big lesson in my life. We fear change as individuals, as humans. We don't want to go find out what the we don't want to deal with uncertainty. We don't want to go and figure out if something on the other side is better or not. We have to have that personality of gamblers. And I think that part of it, the ability to deal with new things, with new friends, with new people, with new environments, starting from scratch, was a very fundamental in me having the strength, the comfort to start businesses and to know that in the business world and entrepreneurship, there is no assurance. I think that perhaps most of us, when we get comfortable in a job or with a salary, we don't want to lose that. We don't know if we move away from this comfortable place, and perhaps it's not even comfortable, but at least it's what we know. We don't know if it's going to be better or worse, and that fear is what somehow we have to overcome.
You mentioned confidence. Is that something that you picked up in life? Is that something you learned from your father? Is that something that the community brought to you? Where did you learn all of this?
It was a sequence of events. I learned about pain at a very young age, and I got comfortable with. I think I was born with this ability to survive, to strive, to fight back, to not let things get to me. I'm not stronger than anyone else. I'm not smarter than anyone else. I just learned very young that pain is something that we can all handle. Poverty is something that we can all handle. Starting again, something that we can all handle. But when we get there, it's very scary. And I think that what allowed me was doing it so young and going through difficult things in my life at a very young age allow me to be able to tolerate those ups and downs, to stomach the imperfections and the inconsistencies of the business world. And now, although yes, they never get old, you still get uncomfortable with having a bad month or a bad day or a bad year in the business world. But you start understanding that you just need to move forward and that things are eventually going to get better if you just keep going. Yeah, you might get in a bad mood and you might get annoyed by circumstances, but you start building up a little bit of a comfort level that these are just cycles. Call them daily, weekly, monthly, or yearly cycles. Life is always a uphill battle. Even when you're doing well, there's still obstacles, there's still problems to solve. So it was something that it was in my nature, understanding that no matter what happened, I was okay and that I would figure it out was something that just, it was a combination of my nature and just, as they say, rolling with the punches, not having the option, but to move forward every time something went wrong.
It's funny listening to that because, like I mentioned, this week we're working on these entrepreneurial projects. I asked my kids, what is an entrepreneur? And of course, to them, an entrepreneur is somebody who creates businesses. Absolutely true. Then I think back to some of the interviews I've heard with Steve Jobs, and the answer is, well, what is an entrepreneur? And it's basically somebody who sees the craziness in what they're doing, but has the passion to push through it. And what you just said is absolutely in line with that. You know that your childhood was what it was. You knew growing up was what it was, but you just made it because you believed in yourself. You had that confidence. Now, in the middle of all of that, you got a degree in business administration and economics, but you also got one in philosophy. How do those three things work together in the world of business, entrepreneur, leadership? How, especially that philosophy one. How does that help you grow your business?
First, I won't get too deep into that because that was by accident. I was never a good student. To your audience, I have to tell you, I was a horrible student. Teachers had a lot of patience with me. They knew that I was in and out of school all the time, and they helped me get through. I had great mentors and teachers that allowed me to make it through one year at a time. And eventually I knew that I wanted a degree. That's how it all started. It was going to be tough. School was not my forte nor my priority. I wanted to make money. I wanted to build something. I wanted to go on my own, but I knew that I also wanted to have a degree. And that is one of the things that in my family, my previous generations didn't have that opportunity, and I didn't want to waste it. But what it meant for me in general terms, entrepreneurship is so much more than starting a business. It's having the curiosity, having the desire, having the need to see beyond what your everyday activities are. Uh, that desire to know how far you can go and being able to take that risk. I describe, if you really think about the fundamental personality of an entrepreneur, goes back in time from people that were discovering new places and risking their lives to take on journeys that were even sailors that got on a boat and didn't know if they were coming back. That's the essence of
Mm.
entrepreneurship, is wanting to discover what's beyond, and not only what's beyond in the innovation, in starting things and building things, but what's beyond my own life. What else is there? Do I want to grow old and know that I didn't try something new, or that I didn't maximize my potential, or that I didn't become everything that I could have become out of the fear of failing? That is what propels me. That is what pushes me. And we are entrepreneurship is about speculating. It's about taking risks, taking a gamble on the unknown, knowing that there's a probability to fail and for things to go wrong, but knowing that it might be worse if I don't try. It
Mm.
might be worse if I get stuck where I am. Sometimes it works, but the worst case is you go back and start from scratch. It sounds horrible and it sounds painful, but once you've endured it, there's a there's a inner peace in failing, because you understand that now you're capable of dealing with that. You're capable of starting again. Things cannot get much worse. I've found some calm moments in my life when everything went wrong, because sometimes our brains are more worried. We suffer more in our brains when everything can go wrong that necessarily doesn't ever happen. I've been in worse moments when I'm worrying about things that never actually happen. As long as you take action, do what you need to do the best that you can, you're never going to regret it. So that's how I've dealt with entrepreneurship.
Was there a moment growing up that you said, I want to start my own business? Did you work for somebody and then say, I never want to work for somebody again? Was it just in your nature to say, okay, I'm going to start this and this and this, and eventually it was, here's a company? Like, what got you started? Was it a fork in the road? Was it just the way that the road was moving?
Yeah, for me it was quite the opposite. I never worked for anyone else. I have not to this date. Over the decades that I've been in business, I don't know the feeling. And listen to what I'm going to tell you, because it's a double-edged sword. I have never felt the feeling of receiving a paycheck from someone. I don't know what it feels, which is good because I've had that freedom my entire life, from the time I had nothing and the times when I lost businesses, and I didn't have enough money to pay the rent, or figure out how to eat and how to support myself, to the times when I became wealthy. I had that level of uncertainty, but the how I got started was the opposite as most people. I had the fear of working for someone. Most people have the fear of going on their own. I was so uncomfortable, so perhaps I lacked the confidence of going and knocking on doors and asking for a job because I was very insecure about myself when I was very young. So this is the opposite of most people. They have this insecurity of going on their own and being able to run a business, so they work for somebody else. I was insecure about working for somebody else. I was scared of how I was going to be treated. I was scared of the interviewing process. The few interviews I went on were horrible. This is back in a time where political correctness didn't exist and people treated me horrible. They asked me about my scars. They asked me about my accident. They asked me if I was able to perform these duties even though I had scars all over myself. And I mean, it was terrifying where I said, I'm not going to do that. I have to figure out how to make a living without requiring my life being dependent upon someone else. And so perhaps it's a little bit the reverse process in most people, but I couldn't see myself working for someone else because I wasn't confident enough to do it.
We mentioned at the top of the show here the word resilience, and your career certainly has had its ups and downs. Give us the 30-second overview here. Business failure, business failure. If you don't mind those terms, I'm quoting here. What is it like to build up something, watch it go away, and then build something up, watch it go away? What is that roller coaster like?
Very emotional. When I talk about entrepreneurship and preparing for entrepreneurship and for a business, I always talk about mentally preparing for dealing with adversity, dealing with problems. When you get too confident, too comfortable, knowing that things are just going to work out the way that you intended it, is when you set yourself up to fail. But if you go in with a mentality of it's going to be difficult, there's going to be sacrifice, there's going to be an endless number of hours. I'm not going to own my business. The business is going to own me. I'm going to work and do whatever I need. And the success is not going to be consistent. There's going to be ups and downs, good days, bad days, perhaps more bad days than good days, which I still experience. But I keep going. I keep understanding that every failure is propelling me, is teaching me something, is pushing me forward. When you go in with that mental state of mind that it's ups and downs, you have better chances than when you're not ready for it. When you think that things are going to go in a certain direction and you're not ready to face failure and you're not ready to face losing it all, the something I say very often is you you cannot be ready to make a lot of money or to be very successful if you cannot stomach losing a lot of money and losing your time and losing your effort. One of the investments that I made early on that a lot of people shock me and confuse me because they want to be successful and they don't act like it. For example, in my earlier years, I would go to school and work at night, or I would be operating a small business while at night I was doing other activities, planting the seeds. I had no friends, or I avoided them. I avoided wasting time. I avoided leisure time. When you start piling up all of these extra minutes and hours of the day and of the week where you can start building something, this is the biggest recommendation that I give your audience. For example, that they already have a job, they're busy, they have families. Figure out how to make a little bit of extra time to build something on the side. And eventually that might turn into something. Just avoid distractions, eliminate distractions that are not productive for you.
Well, that leads me into the next question, which is something you and I have in common that we were talking about before the recording started. You and I are both in the Fathers of Multiples Club. And, I can speak from experience daily. It's hard, even with having a TeacherCast, even having a business, trying to put this thing together and being a successful full-time teacher, those risks are difficult to take when you know you've got people depending on you. You can't put all your eggs in one basket, because if that basket goes away, there's people depending on that. What advice do you have for those educators out there that are trying to not leave the classroom, but create something? But you, I've had people come on the show and they say, just leave your job and put both feet into this. And I'm going, dude, I can't do that. I don't think who can do that when they've got
A family.
You have twins, right?
Yeah.
What advice do you have for the people out there that are trying to put 2 feet, if not more, into it, but you really can't take that extra jump because of everything around you?
You don't have to risk everything. You just have to be very, very smart, very frugal with your time, very organized. If you're not organized, one of the fundamental ingredients and components in becoming successful and becoming an entrepreneur is taking advantage of your time every minute, using it carefully, and being smart about how you invest it. Yes, even today that I'm already owning and operating different businesses and have a family, and I don't even need to be doing all of these things, it is very easy to get disoriented with life, to get pulled in different directions, to have quality time. I am someone who doesn't necessarily believe, I'm going to admit that I don't believe in balance. I think that you need to make a choice. Do you choose to take, and let me back up for a minute. I don't suggest that anybody should risk their family and their job to do better, but you need to start compromising, maybe putting aside money, start to save money, start to work extra hours on a side project, start investing your time and your energy and your effort every waking moment that you have available to build something else. And know that that balance is going to be very, very difficult. It's going to get a little bit harder before it gets easier. You're going to have to, you have no idea how many times I'm working in the middle of the night and early morning, and it doesn't end. It never ends. But the rewards are there eventually. It takes time to build something, but you have to do it. You cannot just talk about it. There's a very, very big difference between the dreamers, the ones who want to do things, the ones who think about doing things and talk about them, and the ones that actually sit down and start creating a plan. So I've been lucky enough where I didn't have to choose that balance, because I was able to order my life where for years at a time, I did nothing but work, 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 and build something. And then I was able to start diversifying my time and start doing other things. But if you already have a family, already have those commitments, then you're just going to have to find those extra hours in the day. But it is possible. I just don't, I think people underestimate how productive they can be in one single day if they stop the chit chatting and stop wasting time on things that are meaningless.
I think that's amazing advice, and highly recommend anybody who's listening hit the rewind button over the last 2 minutes there and check that out. I know over the last almost 14 years of doing this, you have to make those sacrifices. You have to organize your time. It's one of the reasons why I love working with other educators on their productivity and their organizational skills. I want to ask you the same question that I asked you earlier, however. Where did you pick all of this stuff up? I would imagine that growing up, whether it be in business, in life, in your community, in your family, you must have had amazing mentors. Could you share any advice or share with us a little bit about any mentors that helped you along the way?
I think it's a little bit your nature. It goes in combination with those mentors, because you can try to help someone and teach them how to become a better person, how to become more successful, how to become more ambitious. But if it's not in them, it's not going to happen. So I'm going to start from the assumption that your audience, the people that are listening to us, want to get further in life. They want to do better. They want to build something. And I think there are the fact that success happens to be simpler than we think. It's a lot of work, by the way, but it's all about being a good expediter, being a person that's organized, that's always doing something, that's always writing notes, that always has a plan, that always has something going on that is moving you forward. And I had people that helped me around, from my father, and in several of the people that were around me. They were always very, very busy. They created work. They weren't waiting for someone to tell them what to do. They were curious, they were ambitious, they were hungry, and you have to have that desire. I think that's the only word. When you want something else and you combine your desire, your willingness, with your ability to actually do things instead of sitting around and waiting, that's when things begin to happen. Interestingly enough, there are not as many people that are willing to put the sacrifice that it takes to build a business. This is the irony. Everybody wants to become successful. Everybody wants to make money. Everyone wants to have a better life. But very few people are willing to do what it takes. And it's not rocket science. Get up, think of what you like, think of what you're good at, think of what business idea or industry or area that you have some experience that you could actually start something on your own, and go step by step, getting closer and closer to your goals. But if you just talk about it and think about it and not do anything about it because you're scared, or you're just wasting time here and there, then it's not going to happen.
I think that's an amazing set of advice right there. Doing this for the last 14 years almost, I think some of the best compliments that come towards the channel is when people say, you're still doing this. Like, yeah, of course we're still doing this. There's the passion's there, the fire's there, the meeting people, the working with people. In education, Jose, we have this term teachable moment, which means what's that one thing that kind of stuck with you, or that kind of hit that fork in the road that made you go? Can you think back, whether it be a mentor, something that you picked up in business, a negotiation tactic, anything? What would you say is your best teachable moment that you really just stick with you constantly?
Well, I may go in a different direction.
Sure.
um, I don't think I had one moment that just changed my life, other than a sequence of events. I wanted to belong. I
Mm.
came from a background where I was impacted by a life experience that changed my destiny. And from that moment, my objective was to just fit in, to do well, so that people wouldn't see me as as the victim, as someone who was in and out of hospitals and having a difficult childhood. I just wanted to be seen as someone who could contribute to society and do something better than others. That was what fed me from the early years. It Now, if you combine that, here's a funny one. From the time that I was very young, I liked good things, quality things, a better life. I liked to have a good quality of life overall, and that made me focus on it. That made me pay attention to it. So little by little, when you add those minutes and hours devoted to something, just like any athlete, just like any expert in any science, when you start adding the number of hours that they devote to their craft and to their activity, little by little, they start getting better and better at it. So I don't know that there was one single moment that just propelled me to, or one piece of advice. I think it was my desire from the get go. And of course, my circumstances change. One of the worst things that can happen to someone is to get comfortable in their job, in their activities, in their life. That can be very limiting because the fear of walking away from that. Once you have that, I don't think I ever had that comfort level in my life to the point where I didn't want to walk away from it. So that allowed me to keep just moving forward and moving and looking for opportunities because I never had that stability, let's call it. So before I knew it, I was doing well. One day I woke up and I didn't even realize it. Every time I was doing well in my business or in my businesses, because I was too busy working and building. And before you know it, you just build something and you have no idea how you got there. Sort of like running a marathon. I mean, you're running, and it's one step and another step, and 1 mile and another mile, and before you know it, gosh, I've gone very, very far and didn't even notice how I got there.
You mentioned one step here, one step there. That basically describes being a dad. And your twins are 10. My triplets are 11. And every time I turn around and figure out where we are, and you go, oh, we've come a long way here. What advice do you give them? I'm sure they look up to you. I'm sure that you talk to them about what you're doing. I'm sure that you are, and I'm sitting here watching the pictures scroll around on your website and stuff. And I love seeing all the baseball pictures and stuff like that. What advice do you give them, or do you plan on giving them as they progress into their potential entrepreneur careers?
Well, of course, my son wants to be an entrepreneur already. My daughter is more of an artist. One of the things that I will never regret has been spending as much time, quality time. If you don't have so much time, if you can't see your kids morning and night, and in as much as you can, when you are there, try to be present. That's something. Even if I have 1,000 things going on in my mind, I try to not let them realize that my brain is so confused. I try to pay attention to them. I try to be with them. I give them so much advice that I don't think they'll be able to capture all of it. I'm going to be more frank. One of every parent's fears, including yours and mine, is that we'll never know if we did a good job until many, many years later. Did I give them enough time? Did I give them too much time? Did I give them too much love and not enough love? Did I give them too much education? Did they suffer enough to become successful and appreciate what they have, or vice versa? It's hard to gauge now that I've seen so many parents in different generations where some of the most successful kids came from nothing and had nothing, and they didn't even have parents, and they succeeded. And others that had everything, the table was set up for them to become the best they could become, they didn't. So one of the puzzling questions that all of us is, how should I react and react? How much should I give? How much should I help and contribute to their future so that they become the best version of themselves? Ultimately, I think the answers appear to be self-explanatory. Give them love, give them a great education, don't make things so easy for them. But who knows? So the answer is, I do spend a lot of time with them, talking, laughing, taking care of them, and hoping that they're going to follow some of the advice that you give them. Sometimes you have to live this experience in your own body. It's hard to follow experience from somebody else. That's the nature of a lot of kids. They want to live it, they want to experience it themselves before they can understand if what you're saying makes any sense.
That is beautiful, and stuff that I think about constantly when you're trying to balance, being a dad, being a teacher, being an entrepreneur, but just being in each of their lives, right?
Yeah.
I'm sure you have the same, the same thoughts. Am I spending time with them? Am I spending time with each of them? Am I spending time with one versus the other? Let's take it this way. Look at the camera. Look at all those teachers who are watching you right now. What is the advice that you have for everybody as we start to go through 2025? What advice you have for any teacher out there that's trying to figure out what is that first step in entrepreneurship? Maybe what's that second step? How do you be successful? Give us that last word right now. What advice do you have for anybody out there in education looking to support themselves and move forward with things?
That's a great question, and I'm going to try to answer it from my heart, because I know anything that anyone can say, it's easier said than done. And before I answer that, I have to tell you that yes, juggling your work and your kids, it's very, very difficult. Giving them I don't know how you do it with triplets, because with twins, one of my biggest challenges is to actually be able to give them quality time, individual quality of time, when they're fighting for your attention. Being a parent and building a business, I mean, let me back up. Building a business is very difficult. It's incredibly difficult. Building it when you have children, it's a unique outer body experience. So here's my recommendation. I'm not going to sugarcoat it. It's going to be difficult. Don't gamble your career. Don't gamble their livelihood. Don't gamble a roof over their head. It's not worth it. But here's what's worth it. Figure out how to come up with more hours out of the day. Figure out how to organize yourself. Plant some seeds. And the first step is understand what you're good at, understand what you like, what industry, what business, what concept you're passionate about. Don't do something. The number one advice I give, don't do something just because you're going to make a bunch of money, because you want to make a bunch of money, or you think you're going to be successful, because chances are that it's not going to work. If you get in it because you understand what you're doing, you like the business, and you think you can contribute something to that industry, it's going to help your chances. So, first of all, you have to identify that. Make sure you're good at it. Make sure you understand it, you know a little bit, do your homework. And then from that point on, then start finding how to, whether it's capital intensive, how to raise money, or how to find the right partners, team up. Here's one last one. Don't try to do it by yourself. Even me, as a very, very experienced entrepreneur, when I start new businesses or build new businesses, I don't take everything on myself. I know that there needs to be a team, someone who understands the finances, someone who understands the marketing and sales, or the artistic side, or the technical side. Find people that you can work together in a few hours a day, start putting that business together. And it's possible. It's possible. But, don't gamble at all, and don't get into something just because you're going to make a bunch of money. That's not the way it works.
I mentioned it at the top of the show. This is going to be one of those interviews that you're going to want to watch a couple times. I know I'm going to be watching this interview one more time just to kind of make sure I get every single piece of information out of this. I've been talking today to Jose Berlanga. Thank you so much for your time and for taking the opportunity to share a little bit of your life, a little bit of your success, and a lot of advice with us. Where can we go to learn more about you and learn, where can we learn more about you?
Well, hopefully there'll be more. I'm writing my third book now. And before I tell you that information, I want to tell your audience to never lose hope, to keep trying. I'm going to give you the last piece of advice, and perhaps the most important one. Every time that I've gotten into a business, an enterprise, or an activity for selfish reasons, because I wanted to do better and make money, I never did well. Every time that I got into a business because I wanted to help a cause, I wanted to help someone else, I wanted my family or someone that needed my participation in a certain activity, and I contributed, somehow I made a bunch of money. That's a secret in the world of entrepreneurship. When you go after this shiny thing called money, normally it doesn't happen. When you go because you're wanting to help, and even if it's because you want to do something for someone else, I've ended up making a bunch of money doing that. So what an irony, but it always works. You can find me at joseberlanga.com. I do very little social media. This is super exciting and fun for me uh, to have these interviews. I've been a very anonymous business person because of the same reason. I don't have time to be perhaps doing things that are not just operating my business, but now that it's the new era of social media and in different methods of exposing your career and your business, it's been very fun. So joseberlanga.com is probably the easiest way to find me.
Well, Jose, thank you again so much for your time. Please invite yourself back on. Would love to continue this conversation. There's so much in the world of entrepreneur we didn't even touch today. Would love to bring you back on and continue down that track.
It'll be my honor. Thank you very much, Jeffrey. I really appreciate the invitation.
We talked about resilience today, something that is certainly on the top of my mind as an entrepreneur, as a dad, as a teacher. And if you guys are out there looking for more in these topics, please head on over to teachercast.net/podcast, where you can check out all of the episodes of The Jeff Bradbury Show, Digital Learning Today, Ask the Tech Coach, and our entire 14-year catalog of educational podcasts. And if you'd like to be a guest on a future show, head on over to our contact list at teachercast.net/contact. We'd love to have you guys on there too. One last time, thank you guys for being on the show, checking this out. Hit that like and subscribe button. And as we say every single show, thank you guys for sharing your passions with your students. Have a good night, everybody.